I was having a conversation with my brother a while back, and in this conversation, political one, it started going to a point where we were butting heads, and I realized something. It became something of an epiphany for me, even though it's a relatively simple one, a metaphor. I told him, it's interesting how we can align on so many things, but there comes a point where we deviate in our positions or in our beliefs. It's a lot like we're sitting at a fence line, and we're sitting on this fence facing opposite directions, and ultimately we hop off the fence on opposite sides and stand on opposite sides of this fence, and that's okay. There's something to be said about that metaphor. I'd like to elaborate on it, and if you're up for it, let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to the Ace Talks podcast. I'm your host, Gus Guzman. Thanks for joining me. So we're talking about this epiphany, right? Where my brother and I are on opposite sides of this fence talking about political issues, talking about principle, belief systems, things like that. So I started thinking about this fence and I started elaborating that out into a bigger metaphor. So it's like we're sitting on this fence, right? And we can sit there and we can talk, but ultimately when we have to stand, we stand on opposite sides. We stand in our belief systems on opposite sides of this fence. But then I started applying that to Americans as a whole, to our entire country as a whole, right? Because there's two sides to this fence. So just in this particular analogy, right, left and right, and everything in between. But I think that traditionally, as Americans, we have been able to stay at the fence line. We have been able to talk to one another on the other side of the fence line very well, at least for quite some time now, for a few decades, if you will. Even when people have gotten fired up and whatnot, a lot of the times that's just kind of happening off in no man's land, and the majority of people remain on this fence. Whether or not they agree, they can still talk, right? The problem lately, I think, is the people that have often just kind of been off in no man's land as small and loud and kind of obnoxious subgroups. Those subgroups out in the field are getting to be much bigger, and more people being pulled away from the fence. And it's hard for people to even hear themselves think, let alone speak at that fence line, when there's people on the left side of it and the right side of it that are sharpening their sticks and honing the rocks and fixing to fight and yelling at everybody on the fence line that they should join them and they should join their cause, to damn the other side, the folks on the other side of the field, but also to damn everybody on the other side of the fence. That's, I think, what we're facing right now in America. And I think what we need to work on is to get back to the fence and to have a conversation. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard because so many people are pulling us away, right? And on top of that, you can just talk about extreme groups or whatever, but what about the media getting involved? What about politicians themselves and the rhetoric that they're spinning on both sides often, right? On one hand, you have mainstream media. If you don't believe mainstream media is liberally biased, you're silly. And if you don't believe that alternative media is biased in a conservative way sometimes, then you're also probably a little silly, right? Everybody has a bias. You have to be able to understand that. If you don't believe there's bias, dude, I can't help you, right? Or at least I don't want to try. So understand that there's so many things that are trying to tear us away from the fence, that are pulling at our attention, that are pulling at our alliances, and it's not constructive. At the end of the day, it just makes for chaos. The reality is that this fence line, if you will, this field that this fence is in, it's all of it is our shared space, right? We have this amount of space, and that is the United States of America. And within it, we have to get along, not necessarily tolerate one another in a sense of, well, I won't offend you, or I won't, do anything to rock the boat with you. That's preposterous. Or that we all have to think the same way. That's even more absurd, right? We have to be able to believe what we believe. And that means that we are never going to agree entirely on anything, except for hopefully that one principal element or those core belief systems that surround America, and that's freedom. The freedom to do that and the ability to navigate that space. So that's what I challenge you to do as we, get this show going. That's what we're certainly going to try to do. But just in general, our message here, our goal, our mission is to share that message, right? To not necessarily get you to think what we believe, but to get you to think. And not only that, but to be able to articulate your position and to get to the table with somebody that agrees with you or that doesn't agree with you or whatever. But don't be silenced. But speak your truth, speak your position, speak your piece, right? Left or right, and especially the right side. Not and look, I definitely am a conservative, and I definitely lean right in pretty much most aspects. But I'm not, I'm not a conservative of the 1950s. I'm a conservative of 2020 and that, or 2022, right? And that means that I'm a modern conservative. But I also believe that, again, if we were all to think the same thing, that would be a tragedy. So I just think that, especially in the last few decades, in the last couple generations, that the liberal side has really taken a strong advantage in the space of sharing their opinions, and we have remained silent. We have remained more quiet, and that's why conservatives are losing. Now, this isn't a war between liberals and conservatives, not any means. It is a matter of balance. It's a matter of balance, ultimately, for what is good for the fence line, for what is good for the field, and for what is good for America. I really want to share that analogy with you. That analogy, that metaphor is, I don't know what the difference is, man. Is it an analogy? Is it a metaphor? I think it's a metaphor. I think an analogy is different, close but different. I think it's a metaphor. I really want to share that because it was one of the most critical root inspirations, I guess, that I had. It was one of those pivotal moments, right? There was a number of them. I have had a couple of them, but that was a really pivotal one. One of the other big ones was, my oldest and closest friend. Him and I were talking a while back, and he was saying how we need to show up, how we're lazy a lot of the times. And not that we're lazy, it's just that we're busy, I guess, right? And we're busy with work, we're busy with families, we're busy with all that. But that gives us this excuse to be less involved sometimes, to, kind of forego the town hall meeting, or to vote on the smaller elections, or to be involved in general, right? And that if we don't like the direction that the country is going in, that we can no longer stand idle and stand by. So that conversation that I had with my good friend a while back, that was another really big inspiration, amongst a number of other ones. I mean, there's a massive list that I could tell you that has culminated over a number of years, over most of my life, truly. The first one being I talk my ass off, and I'm good at that. So and ultimately landing here with a belief system that really surrounds America, and trying to not necessarily even advance, just empower Americans and empower the people that believe in what America represents, and to say that it's okay. Not only just to say that it's okay, but necessary, and to give a voice, if possible, to the people that believe in America. That's what I'm here to do. And those are just a couple of inspirational occurrences in my recent history that really helped to support and to kind of propel my efforts into this project. So now you know. With all that said, thanks for watching. If you're an American patriot, good time to start acting like one. Share with the patriot. We'll see you soon.